Welcome to Out of My Mouth, the program where raw thoughts meet unfiltered conversations.
Join us as we dive into the depths of human experience, where we share stories, perspectives, and insights that just might challenge the status quo.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and ponder the world around you like never before. This is Out of My Mouth.
The views and opinions of our guest and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of New Thought Media Network, or any organization we may be affiliated with. Here at New Thought Media Network, we welcome freedom of speech and courageous conversations. There are many topics that can be difficult to navigate. Challenging the status quo and engaging in lively debate is important to expanding our understanding of one another, and life in general. Creating a peaceful world doesn't happen because no one disagrees, it happens from a willingness to understanding one another. In our programming, we strive to expand consciousness and assist people in creating remarkable lives. Your comments are welcome at info@ntmedia.org.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Out of My Mouth. I'm Barbara Jean.
And I'm Marg.
And we're so grateful that you're watching here today. We have a marvelous guest, but let's begin with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize our oneness. We realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech.
Thank you for speaking to and honoring our land, Barbara.
Thank you, Mark.
I'm so grateful that Rhona Segarra is here with us today. And in her words, in a culture of decreasing religious participation and increasing loneliness, let's adapt religious traditions and apply them in secular communities to ease loneliness. Reverend Rhona Segarra has been the minister at Unity New Westminster in beautiful BC since her ordination in 2019. Now I abbreviated that, but it's British Columbia. Rhona is passionate about people and relationships. Her focus is to share practical, empowering ideas which will add to the joy and peace of our lives and to the lives of those around us. Rhona's mission is to fill the world with love, one interaction at time. My goodness, I've lost my voice. Rhona's mission is to fill the world with love, one interaction at a time. Thank you for your patience. Welcome, Rhona.
That was beautiful, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. And hello, Barbara Jean.
So good to have you here today, Rhona. And I love this topic of no to dogma and yes to community. I like that a lot. So what prompted that idea with you?
Well, I have done, I became a minister partly because I wanted to do weddings. I love weddings. I'm a romantic at heart, and I wanted to be a person who is involved in doing weddings. And so I teased myself into ordination because I wanted to do weddings. Became ordained and waited and waited and waited. And no phone calls, no emails, no inquiries about weddings. I'm like, what do I do now? And so I thought I'd do what every person who is getting married these days and is not part of a faith tradition, what they do, they go onto the internet and they type in wedding officiant Vancouver. And I found a company whose vibe I liked, signed up to do weddings with them, and now have completed 149 weddings with them in 3 years. So I have that in my mind, and I'm overlaying comments that I hear from people who I marry, as well as others, about the idea that they no longer follow a faith tradition, and they miss the sense of community that they felt when they were a part of a faith tradition. And I then overlaid that on the Surgeon General of the United States report last year declaring loneliness an epidemic. And I was taking these moving parts, that loneliness is on the rise, that religion participation is on a decline, and yet that people who have participated in religious traditions really miss that feeling of community. And I thought, it's as if people don't want the dogma, but they long for the community.
Yeah.
And that's where that question mark came from, where that title came from, is the idea of, is there a way that we can build community and create that feeling of belonging without the requirement for a dogmatic participation in a religious tradition?
Wow. Yes.
I have
What was that? What did you say, Barb?
The answer is yes. Sorry, Mark, I interrupted you.
That's okay. We do it all the time on this show. So, Rhona, a couple of questions. Dogma. What does dogma mean? You know, some people that are listening may not know what dogma means. It probably means different things to different people based on their traditions. And part two of this question, before your ordination, after your ordination, and during this journey, have you changed your thoughts about dogma?
Well, let me see if I can answer the first question first. When I think of dogma, I think of it as the requirement to adopt a certain set of beliefs, and the requirement then that in order to participate in the group, you need to agree to this set of beliefs. And the problem, perhaps, is that there is an either or. So you're either in it or you're not. And if you're in it, oh, it feels marvelous. You're part of a group, you're part of a family, you know who you are, you know why you get up in the morning. There's this sense of, I know my place in the world, and I know it's more than just my little spot that I'm standing on. Yeah. And then when we're out of that, if we violate the dogma, if you will, then we're out of that community, and it is the equivalent of solitary confinement for some people. It's like you are no longer welcome here, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful of religious traditions that are more expansive, but I do believe that part of the reason people have turned away from religion and religious traditions is because of this, you have to believe these things. And for some people, it no longer works. For many, it does. And if it's something that uplifts you and provides a strong foundation for you and makes you feel as if you have some meaning on the planet, then that, if it works for you, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there are many, many people who have turned away from religion, and so they don't have that feeling anymore. And many of their children have never even been exposed to that feeling, because it's my generation, I think, that have largely turned away from religious tradition because of the requirement to believe a certain set of rules. That doesn't even make sense, to follow a certain set of rules.
Yeah.
And if they question, and then it's a binary in or out. Because of those reasons, many people have turned away. As a result, their children have never even been exposed to it. So that's what I mean by dogma. And it's really this idea of a requirement to believe a certain set of predetermined beliefs that you may or may not fully agree with. Does that explain that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then to answer your second question, which I think was, have I changed in my understanding of dogma? If anything, I would say I went through a turn away, all dogma is bad, to a more expansive, thankfully, approach of, if it works for some people, let them have it. And where I found myself at one point, and I'm sure this is true for many people in like a new thought community, like Unity is what I'm a minister in, that we have no problem with people who are Muslim or Jewish or Buddhist. But oh my gosh, don't talk to me about being a Baptist or a Pentecostal or something like that. And because they've got the wrong way of doing Jesus. And and I think that's shifted for me into a you do you in whatever way uplifts you, because whether it's Buddhism or Jewish or Wiccan or none of it, or fundamental, if it uplifts you, it uplifts us all. As long as you're not trying to force that on me, because that's taking away my self-determination. So that's probably the biggest expansion for me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Because I think that's a really important thing, that we have to be accepting of people where they are. And I know I've heard sometimes people in our teaching who've been less than accepting of somebody who is, Baptist or Catholic or whatever. So I love your approach, because I think when we consider that we're all one, which is what we believe, is that there's only one thing, then I am the Baptist, I am the Muslim, I am there's that connection where we are actually all connected. And so I love what you said about, if the belief uplifts you, it uplifts us all. And it does, because there's only one thing going on and we're all a part of it. So, I love that.
Yeah, I have this vision of almost like a safety net, like trapeze artists used to have. I don't know if they still do. I haven't been to a circus in a while, but they have this safety net. And as you watch a person, when they drop onto that, because they're finished their performance, the net bounces with them. Where they are, it drops down or it lifts up. Well, if you imagine that we're all part of that net, then whatever one person does to lift lifts the entire net.
Yes.
And the corollary is also true. So I think of us as literally an interconnected net.
Beautiful.
It helps me.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I love it. I love it.
I love visuals. I can see and relate and actually feel, the bouncing together.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right now the planet, I think, is in a place of confused bouncing. And maybe that's a conversation for another day, but when we're all in a place of worry and concern and things are going on all over that feel like they're like what's going on, then some of that worry drops us all down. And so whether we think that we're immune to it or not, it's almost as if it's in the field. And so it would be helpful for us all, I think, to be aware that that is so, and that even though we may think that we have, that we don't care about things happening in various places, and that we, don't watch news or whatever it might be, that regardless, we're part of that same energy system, and so we are part of it. And as a result, I think taking the time to acknowledge that, and then taking the time to be deliberate about how we respond to that, is what will help to lift that net a little bit and lighten the load a little bit, and help us to realize that, yes, there are things on the planet that aren't going the way we want, and there is a lot of love here still. And so to remember to balance that out.
Yeah, I like to think of whenever I hear a news story, which I don't often hear on the news because I don't watch it, but I hear it around me all the time. I never seem to miss anything of substance anyway. And for me, it's a prayer request. Just that, there's, something going on in, Israel and Gaza, or the Ukraine and Russia. And I just hold a consciousness of love, that whatever's going on, of which I have no understanding, whatever's in the highest and best good will always somehow work its way out. So I let go of my determination that it has to look a certain way, and accept the fact that there is something going on that I can't even begin to understand. And by infusing love into the equation, I think that's how we lift one of these. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And also to recognize that it's just part of our evolution. And our evolution is to take 3 steps forward and 2 and 99 100th steps backwards. It's just part of what we do. I mean, at the time that I really clicked into the fact that that history didn't just end now because I'm here and everything is now evolved, was when I actually literally got the calculator out, because I couldn't really believe it. I think back to my grandfather, and he was born in 1896.
Yeah.
So in the course of my life, I've been exposed to people with lifespans that are now like 130 years.
Yeah.
So then I took that, and I took, how long ago was Jesus on the planet? 2,000 years. 2,000 divided by 130. That's only 1,730 period, 130-year spans of time, or 15 it might be. I can't remember, but it's a small number relatively. And then that kind of gives me hope, because I think of where we've come in 130-year lifespans. And it's amazing how far we've moved, and what we've accomplished as humans, and how we've evolved in terms of treating people who are different than we are. And so I just think, in the grand scheme of things, we're here for a blip. The time since Jesus has been a slightly bigger blip, but it's all part of our evolution.
I like that. And I think that, I always think that we're here to live. And the only time we're fully present in that is the now moment. And it's not about where we're getting to, because truthfully, there isn't a destination. We're here to live whatever this experience is, and to take it moment by moment. So I get a little bit excited too when I think about the possibility, when you put it into that frame, it's only 17 times 130. Like, that's hardly a blip. So what is going to happen over the next 17 130-year increments. Like, wow, what's going to happen in 2?
Yeah.
Forget that 1.
Isn't it exciting to think of it that way?
It really is.
It's like, oh, this is, so what we're going through now, it's just part of our humanness. And slowly and slowly and slowly, we will understand that each person on the planet is different. Each person on the planet is going to have a different point of view. By definition, I mean, they use iris scans to tell one person apart from the other, and no one of us has the same iris scan. We don't have the same viewpoint on anything. So if we can learn to understand that and accept it and go, person having an opinion. Oh, person having an opinion. Doesn't have to be mine. Don't have to agree. Don't have to impose. That's the beginning of where I think we can move to a place of true peace.
I love that.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
Somebody's opinion. Oh, that's not mine. Oh my goodness. Rhona, you said something a minute ago that reminded me of what we say can have an impact on someone else. You never know what words, actions that a person can do that can have a ripple effect in this world, which brought me to your series on the Beatles. Now, how long ago were those words sung? What was the intent behind those profound words that are sung by the Beatles?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that speaks volumes to me on what effect we can have on other people without even knowing it. Was it their intention?
It's a really great question. The wisdom endures time, and wisdom, the wisdom of the Beatles, and the thing that made them so special was not just their music. It was the fact that they spoke to the human condition in so many ways, other than boy meets girl, boy loves girl, let's get together forever, which I think I may be kind of simplifying things too much, but largely that's what the music used to be before. But these guys spoke about loneliness and revolution and like serious stuff. And they peppered in boy meets girl and so on, which was great because it's all love. But by throwing in these more complicated questions and then showing us in some ways with their lyrics the wisdom of how we might navigate things like change, the song Revolution is profound. They give us little roadmaps that work as effectively today as they did in the 1960s. Yeah,
that's beautiful. And it's interesting how when you're talking about the longevity of music that really speaks to the human condition, I thought immediately of Amazing Grace, which is also a song that has endured, but because of I think the message of that song, the reason it was written, and the sound of the music itself, I think has provided that opportunity for longevity. I mean, I remember as a teenager, it was on a rock and roll station. Can't remember.
Probably Elvis Presley, wasn't it?
I don't think it was Elvis. This was, I know Elvis did it for sure, but no, this was in the probably 70, maybe 71. And it was a rock version like, at the time of heavy metal and all that. It wasn't a heavy metal song, but it was on one of those radio stations that would play that kind of music. And I can't remember who did it, but I'll have to research that, because that astounded me that that song could make it to mainstream teenagers, at that time. And of course, it's still a strong song in Christian faith, but it's also strong for other people as well. Just that idea of grace, which is such a beautiful idea.
Yeah, the idea of grace is just that universal, unquestioning compassion. I think it was Carl Rogers who defined love as unconditional positive regard. And the idea being that we approach from a point of view of optimism, and sort of this, Margaret, I spoke about it before, this generosity of spirit that says, I'm going to assume a good intention in whatever you're doing, whether or not I agree with it or not. And grace is the underpinning foundation of that idea, or maybe you consider it an umbrella of that idea of, it's just like this, I'm willing to give you space to be who you are, through all the good, all the not so good, the misery that you sometimes behave like, as well as the joy that you behave like, and the decisions that you make, and just be okay with it all. I think that's what grace is. It's like forgiveness on steroids.
I love that. Well, we're at the halfway point, or pretty close to it. So we're going to take a commercial break. You're watching Out of My Mouth here on the New Thought Media Network. And our guest, Reverend Rhona Segarra, is here. And we are excited to continue this conversation. So don't go away. We'll be back in just a minute.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought.
And we're back. All righty. So we were just talking about grace, and now where are we going?
In the commercial, I remembered that I had been told many years ago that Amazing Grace could be played on just the 5 black notes of the piano. And so I looked that up, and it is so. It was written by someone who had been a slave trader and then became a minister. And
so he wrote the lyrics.
He wrote the lyrics, and then the
music
came several years later.
Well, the music came out of the belly of that ship.
Did it?
Yeah. So I can't remember but there's a video on YouTube about, Amazing Grace, Only the Black Notes. And he talks about the song that the slaves were probably singing or humming or chanting, the spiritual and that is the music that actually is in the back of Amazing Grace.
Isn't that a great story?
Yeah. I imagine it's accurate. I don't really know. I just know from the video that I watched that it's like, wow, that could possibly be where that, and it's lasted, it's endured because of, I think, that underlying message of humanity.
Yeah, that, it's one of those underlying messages is if we knew better, we would have done better. And everything is context. And, I think of, and now this is maybe going to be a little politically incorrect, but I think of, for example, things like 30 years ago when there was a politician who dressed up as Michael Jackson and wore blackface. Well, now you would never do that. But in that context, it was completely acceptable, maybe even considered fun and respectful. And now, of course, it's like you're reviled for having done that then, but is that really fair? Because haven't we all done things in our past thinking it was the right thing to do at the time with a completely different intention, perhaps an innocent intention, and now we go back and cringe when we look at it.
I found that I can't even watch certain old movies because of the misogyny, the racism, I just have to leave the room. It's worse than the news.
It's worse than the news. That's saying something.
Because it's like, that's how we lived. That's what we did. That's actually who we were. And that, I think, is the hardest part, to acknowledge that we did harm. And many of us, it was not intentional, but we still did harm. And so now we're trying to figure out how do we do things differently to ensure that there is no repetition of that, where we can actually begin to create more out of love than out of an abuse of power, which I think was some of what was going on.
My gut is still wrenching and my heart is still, and I'm angry, and like when I have the vision of the belly of the ship, and if I go to the 30 years ago when someone dressed up like Michael Jackson, I can wrap my head around, yes, when we know better, we do better, more than the atrocity of the slaves bring. Like, I'm in tears thinking about it. I guess I have some work to do on forgiveness and going like, I remember you're talking about books and movies, and I read the book Indian Horse, and I love Richard Wagamese. I've got so many of his books. I really disliked the book Indian Horse, and then I saw the movie, And I realized I didn't like the book because of the truth that it revealed. And yeah.
I got to write down the title of that one because I haven't read it.
I have not either. It can be so uncomfortable to accept some of the horrors that have been done. And here we go back to the religion thing. Some of it done in the name of religion. And so even that, the word grace, now that we've spoken about it, keeps coming to my mind, Mark. And I'm not sure that it needs to be work on forgiveness. It's just a journey. And you don't have to do it. It's just a journey. And it doesn't have to be work. It's just an opportunity to consider being more open to the context. Wish we didn't do it, and it was done. And how do I want to see myself and the people I know and the people I love treated in the future, and how can I be a part of that? And be heart sore anyway, because it freaking hurts to imagine that people did that to people. The dehumanization of people is the number one thing that we do when we insist on our own right way in any way. And that goes for all of the war of today, all of the wars of yesterday, and all of the wars of tomorrow.
And the bullying that's going on. Because bullying also requires, a certain idea that this person is less than. And so I'm going to do mean things to this other person because there's no good reason for it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times when we as human beings do the unthinkable. And later when we reflect on it, go, whoa, wish I hadn't done that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate part of our humanness is this jockeying for position, perhaps, and the unwillingness to address the discomfort of questioning ourselves about why we're behaving this way. Because even a bully, at their core, are really just longing for someone to hug them.
Oh, absolutely.
And
absolutely, yeah.
And discovering perhaps that, or maybe an unquestioned belief that asking for a hug or needing love or something is a weakness, and weakness is not okay. So there's so much loneliness in the persona of the bully that even if we could see that for who they really are, which is just a little kid who is longing to be loved,
exactly right.
It doesn't mean that we're okay with the behavior.
Nope.
Right.
But it helps to add a little bit of grace to the situation.
I think if we were more willing to notice, like when a behavior is going on, I think it's a call for help. And when you've got a couple of kids that are, sort of butting heads for one reason or another, I think making one of them bad and wrong and one of them, the victim, I think we've really done a disservice, because they're both victims in a sense. The one that is doing the bullying, there's a reason for that as well, which might mean they're being bullied at home, or they're not getting, like you say, the love that they need, or that hug or whatever. And so they're acting out and fighting against what they deem as maybe somebody who is getting that, rather than, who they are. So I think there's a lot of depth when we sit back and go, how do we take this to a deeper place I think we have to look at everything and realize too that every person is generally doing what they believe, right? What they believe to be the right and perfect thing in that moment. So whether we're looking at Putin or Hamas or whatever we're looking at, there's an idea in there that somehow I'm doing something for myself or for others. And it's hard for the rest of us to really, like Cheryl just said in the chat, hurt people.
Yeah.
So I think there's a whole new way of looking at all of this. This stuff is coming to a place of love for every heart.
Yes, and it's one of those say yes to the person and no to the behavior.
Exactly.
And it's all those things are true, and sometimes the behavior, because it's harming someone else, that's not okay.
Exactly.
So whenever we're in that place of we are right, war, it is, as you say, a place where you have this either or a winner or a loser.
Yeah.
And there's no space then for let's have a genuine understanding that I have preferences, you have preferences. We both actually have a right to them.
Exactly.
We both have a right to a certain amount of space, whatever that might look like.
Yeah.
And how can we navigate that? As opposed to whether it's a bullying on a schoolyard scale or a bullying on a nation to nation scale, the principles are the same. It's like
Everything.
you're dumb, I'm right,
Yeah.
and there is no discussion, and you don't deserve to be here. And
Yeah.
hey, it's complicated.
It is.
And at the same time, it's actually quite simple, which is we're all here. We're all in the soup together. How do we make it into something that tastes good for everybody?
Yeah, there you go.
The intergenerational pictures that the intergenerational harm that we're doing right now on the planet, though, is a concern for me. We have children who are innocent of anything except being alive, who are now struggling without parents and without homes and without all of the foundations that one would think are necessary for life, certainly for full and abundant living. And those children are going to have their own harms to deal with as they grow. And this is, I think, the reason Jesus said it's not even enough to go from an eye for an eye, for an eye for an eye. You have to turn the other cheek. We have to see things differently than how they are now, because the old law was, and you took an eye, I'm going to take your family.
Yeah.
Then the law moved to an eye for an eye, like a retribution that sort of made sense. There's a name for it now. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a reciprocal response, I think is what they would say.
Yeah.
And yet his teaching was, don't even do that, because it still creates harm. Where there's harm, hurt people. We have to move. At some point, humanity has to learn that we have to move from hurting each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Rhona, you said you started your journey because you were interested in performing weddings. And I'm sure your intelligence, your passion, compassion always was there. And I wonder if going through your studies, if you developed more skills. And I'm just so grateful that you went beyond becoming a person who does weddings, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
You know, I think, thank you. I think the idea of becoming ordained just felt like it was too big, too holy, too much of a who are you to be a minister. And so I think it was my way of sneaking into the ordination. Does that make sense at all? When I came close to like the final step of becoming ordained, or putting my application in to be ordained, I had this massive, like, what right do you have? And I called a friend of mine in Denver, actually in Colorado, and I said, talk me off the ledge here. Like, I'm like in that place. And she said, you're just upper limiting. It's okay. It's just normal. And she just kind of just took it all. It just means that this is something that means a lot to you, and you're concerned about whether you'll do it well, and notice it for what it is and do it anyway. So
we all need a friend like that.
Yes, exactly. So
upper limiting. I love that. That's a great phrase.
Yeah.
So does Unity have a dogma?
I would say it's a little bit of a yes and a no. There are, and the reason I say it that way is that we welcome all people and all faiths. And depending on the church that you're at, or the spiritual center that you're at, you may hear excerpts from the Bible. I certainly bring in the wisdom teachings of Jesus quite often, but not at every service. We have 5 principles. So I guess it's slightly different from a dogma in that we don't expect anyone to unquestioningly believe anything. What we do is say, these are the principles we think work, and here are some ideas how you can apply those principles. Try them, and if you like them, it's like a buffet. It's like you go to a buffet. Today, this feels like the right thing to pick up and try. And if it doesn't work for you today, who knows? Maybe you'll like it like you like broccoli now that you didn't like it when you were 8. So, or maybe you still don't like it. But, we have 5 basic principles. One universal power, that there's a network of all, that ideas, whatever ideas we have, lead to the experiences that we have in life, or to how we approach our experiences in life, that we take time to be still, and that when we do that, we'll live in peace. And then the suggestion. So that's sort of the principles. To put the principles to work, you start at the bottom. Are you living in peace? If it's not peaceful, what can you do? Take time to be still. And then question what you're thinking. And ask yourself if there's another idea that could add more peace. Turn the other cheek. Keeping in mind always that we have this umbrella of one power. So call it God, Buddha, the force, quantum, life, nature, whatever the heck you might call it. It's one. It's not like we have, I have this vision of the Christian God and Buddha and like all of these other gods sitting up in heaven and having tea and looking down at all of us humans and shaking their heads and saying they still don't get it.
What the hell?
Having a chuckle.
Yeah, and so keeping in mind that there's only one power, one creative energy, whether it's a he, a she, an it, quantum. It doesn't matter what you call it.
Yeah.
There is only one. There can't be anything that's like, okay, well, this area of the universe is ruled by God, and okay, this part of Africa is going to be ruled by something else. No, it's one.
It's one.
And we're all part of it.
I love that.
So, and then our goal is, as ministers, my goal is to take a human problem or a human concern, often that I've just experienced, and see how the principles that I just spoke about might apply. Like, let me try a different idea here because the idea I had didn't work that well. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, the minute we begin to look at something from a new perspective, it changes it dramatically. And it's so powerful to begin to, somebody was on our show, this one or the other one, I can't really remember at the moment. It was this show because it was, oh shoot, his name just left my mind. Anyway, he talked about when he came out to his parents, and before he did, he sat with himself and went, so what if they fully accept me? Awesome. And what if they don't? Well, that's their choice. And he spoke about it that way. Paul Hasselbeck. And he talked about, I had to, before I even went into the conversation, I needed to be right here, like just to be able to go, here's what I'm saying and doing, but I don't know how they're going to react, but I get to choose how I react. And the fact that he sat back and went, however they decide, that's their choice. And I let them have their ability to choose. And I thought, wow, if more people would approach things like that, wouldn't that make a difference?
It sure would.
Mm-hmm.
It sure would.
It can be frightening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, the biggest, other than the death penalty, the most damning thing that we can do to another human is to turn them away. That's why solitary confinement is so serious of a thing that they do in prisons. It's why at school, especially in England, for a time, it was like you go sit in the corner and wear the dunce's cap and no one is allowed to talk to you. And they had a name for it. It was called Coventry. Like everyone had to turn their back on you. And so one of our deepest fears is to be rejected by the people we care about.
Yeah.
And it's a very valid fear, which comes from, the times of caveman times where it was literally dangerous to be on your own and without the protection of the tribe. And we need connection with each other.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a lot of risk when people say, no, I can't live with you anymore, or no, I'm not, I disagree with your lifestyle so much that I'm cutting you out of my life. There's a lot of risk.
and that seems to be happening a bit in the US over this election. Like there's a lot of people who are really, becoming hateful of other people that they know because they have differing political stands. And that's wild. Like that just blows me away.
Yeah. with that, I often think about the words of Barack Obama, who said, if I watched Fox News, I wouldn't vote for me either. And it was just such a reminder that we make our decisions based on what we're exposed to.
Exactly.
And frankly, technology has moved at a pace that we don't even, it's like trying to get out of the water when the surf is pulling you back. We can't even get our footing enough to take a break and a breath to understand that and the implications of it and how to respond to it. If you watch, doesn't matter which network you're on, you watch CNN and I do, it's very anti one way and pro another.
Yeah.
And if it's the other, if Fox News is going to be completely different and anti both. Now, I believe that there is a false equivalency if we say that the two are equally dangerous. But one of these things is not like the other. So that's what I mean by that. But the premise, though, still holds, is that how balanced are we? During the pandemic, and now even periodically, I will look at the CNN app and take these are the 10 things that are the top of theirs. And then I'll take the Fox News app and look, or I go onto their website and this is the top 10 things.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe you were in the same country. You wouldn't believe that you were talking about the same thing. They are that different. Like maybe by about point number 7, you'll find something that's common to both.
Wow.
People make their decisions based on how much on what they're being told, and unfortunately, it's really hard to get through that.
And what we're being told isn't necessarily what's truly happening.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. We're at the end of our time, but I would like to take this last minute, if you can give us one point that you think people should really take away from our conversation today. What would be the most important thing?
I think the idea of grace, grace under pressure, grace in judgment, grace in self-judgment, the idea of creating a gentle safety net for all of our mistakes as well, and encouraging people to look at people from that view of grace. So that's my suggestion would be.
Oh, it's beautiful. Reverend Rhona, thank you. You've been wonderful. Marg, thank you so much for being here. We're at the end of our time. And
thank you, Barbara.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Thank you for having me. What a joy it has been to have this discussion with you.
Yay, I'm so glad. Well, you're watching Out of My Mouth on the New Thought Media Network, and we'll be back again next week with another remarkable, interesting guest. And until then, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and maybe even consider donating to the New Thought Media Network. Bye for now. See you next time.
Bye, and thank you, Deja.
Yes.
Bye.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.